So today we will study or we will see what is closure, what is event bubbling, and how can I create a custom event. So closure is quite important concept in programming. Simply, we will have a function inside another function, but the inner function, just remember the variable inside the outer function. What do I mean by that? So let's create a function here. I will just say, for example, hello, or say hello. We need to start with verb. And now here say hello, it will be just an arrow function, as you can see. And now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create a variable, say called message. It's equal to hello, for example. And then what I'm going to do here, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. So that's my message. Then after that, I will log my message. Just log my message. That's it. And now here, of course, I need to excuse this function. I need to call it. And here, while I'm calling this function. Now I will go to the dev tools to see this function and what happened with this variable, which is called message. It should be a very simple function so far. I mean, it's nothing new here. Let me click on this one, ignore these buttons for now. I'm going to go to the source, and the source I have main.js. So now what's going on here, now I'm gonna put a breakpoint here, and I will notice what happened in the scope here in the memory. So let's put a breakpoint here. And then after that, if I refresh my page, of course, because I'm executing my function, it will stop here. Now notice in the scope here, there is a variable here is being created, which is message. And the value of message is not known currently because I did not execute this line. So if I execute this line, notice what, voila, now the value of the message is hello. Of course, when my function being executed, notice what will happen after that. This variable here, it will be removed from the memory. Why? Because the function is being executed, it's being finished. So if I click on that, and I click on that, and voila. So as you can see here in the memory or in the scope here, I don't have the variable message anymore. So inside the function, when you create a variable, when you execute the functions, the variable being created is in the memory on the scope. You can see them here. But when the function is being executed, the variable will be removed from the memory because I don't need it anymore. Is the idea clear what I'm trying to explain?
Yes.
It's nothing new. It's the same what we did. And currently, there is nothing new. Okay, we understand this one here. Now let's go and understand what are closures. So let's put it here. Make some space. In here in closure, I can just create an arrow function. It's fine. I can name my outer function. I will name it outer. Outer just it's outer function. So the outer function, it will be arrow function. Voila. And here in the outer function, I'm going to declare a variable. Let's, for example, say const name, it's equal to John, for example. Now, I'm going to create a new function. So here, I'm going to create a new function, and I'm going to name it inner. That's so it will, because it is inside the other one. So inner function also, it will be an arrow function, as you can see. Voila. And here, in the inner function, what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to log the name. Remember, the name here does not, it's belong to the scope of the outer function. So this variable here, I created it in the outer function. Now this inner function, what is doing here? It will just log here the name here. So it will grab this variable here, and it will grab it here. And then after that, it will log it, simply like that. Okay, fine. Now what do I need to do? I'm going to return my outer function. I'm sorry, my inner function. So what am I doing here? Well, I created an outer function, as you can see. My outer function, I'm creating a variable at line 4. The name is John. Then I have inner function, inner, because it is inside the outer function. And this inner function accessing the variable here, this variable which is being declared inside the scope of the outer function. And then after that, just log it. What I'm doing in this function now, I'm returning the inner function. So I can return this function here. By the way, I can return it directly if I want to. I can just say return const inner. It will work as well. But for now, it's fine. Like that, I think it's better. It's more clear. Okay, now, if I execute the outer function now, what will happen? What do you think it will happen if I execute the outer function? So if
it will log the name.
Hmm?
It will log the name.
No, how can it log the name? Let's go here and see if it will log the name, or of course it's not gonna log the name. Agnieszka. First, you need to understand there is two functions here, the outer and the inner. So when I execute the outer function, it will create a variable in the memory, and then it will return the inner function. I'm not executing this function. The inner one, I'm not executing it, so it will not log anything. Do you understand what I'm saying or not? There's two function here, the outer and the inner. Now in the outer function, I am declaring a variable here. So it will create, when it come here, it will create this variable in the memory. Then it will come and create this function, the inner function. Then it will return the inner function. It will not execute it. It will just return it. So now here, if I execute the outer function, what I will get? What I will
The
get?
inner?
Of course, so it will return me the inner function here. And I can save it in a variable. So I can say const inner, it's equal to the outer like that. Why? Because simply here, if I execute this function here, it will return me the inner function. And now here's the inner function, I'm saving it in a variable. And if I log the inner, notice, it will give me the function. I don't want to execute it, of course. I want to just log it. So let's log the inner to see what it is. Why log is not working? Log. So let's log the inner here and see what is going on here. I don't want to execute it. I just want to call it. Voila. Let's go and debug our code. So as you can see here, if I log whatever the function, the outer function return, because this guy here, I'm executing it, it will return me this inner function. If I log it, it will give me the inner function, as you can see. So this one is the inner function. Is the idea clear so far or not? Yes, no? Come on, guys, I'm not explaining, I mean, something.
No, not really. So why do we need two functions, or instead of two, we can write only one, like inner, and that's it. If we return inner.
Yes, but I mean, a practical project, most of the time we write function inside the function. It could happen. And now the concept of the closure, I'm trying to explain this concept with the closure. And the closure, that's how the closure work. It's a function inside the function.
Okay.
You got my point? Okay, fine. Now here, I will go line by line and see what's going on here, because this one is important a little bit. So let me refresh, and while I have a breakpoint here, notice in the scope what's going on. In the scope, I have two variables. I have a variable which is called inner, and I have a variable which is called name. So the inner here, because I'm saving my function, my arrow function for this variable, and I have name. Now here, when I execute the code, click, now the name has a value is John. If I click this inner here, it's a function, it's been saved. And now, of course, this function, the outer function, it will return me the inner function. So nothing, zero price. But notice the variable name here. What will happen with the variable name? Notice, just notice. So if I click on it now, my function is being executed, right? Where is my variable name? Can I see my variable name anymore? Where is it? Where is my variable name?
It's gone.
It is what?
It's gone.
It's gone. Why it's gone?
Because it's inside the scope.
No, because I finished executing the outer function. I just explained to you. So when I execute the function, if there is a variable inside the function, it will be created in the memory. And when the function is being executed, finished, the variable will be removed from the memory. And that's the reason here. So when I execute the outer function, yeah, first when I'm executing the name, it will be created in the memory. But when I finish executing it, this name variable will be removed from the memory. And here I don't have it anymore. Now the question here is, I don't have the name variable anymore. So how can this inner function access it? Because in the inner function, as you can see, I want to log the name. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this guy here, after I execute this function, this guy here, inner, it does not have access to name anymore. So when I execute the outer, I will get my inner function. So this one will be function. Now, if I execute the inner function, it should log the name. But the problem is I don't have the name anymore because it's being removed from the memory. Is what I'm saying is clear or not? So what I can do here now, I can execute my inner function. Remember the outer function returns the inner function. So this guy here is a function, so I can execute it. And if I execute it and I go to my console, notice what will happen. I have name John, it's login John, but how can that be possible? We've just seen that in the memory, John does not exist anymore. So how can this inner function remember that? Can anyone tell me? Yep. I'm listening.
Maybe a copy was made because the inner function depended on it.
Maybe what?
Maybe a copy of name was made because the inner function needed it to be logged.
That's very good thinking. Any other idea? Any other idea?
Is it saved in a new variable?
Not really. It's saved in another place. So this function, this inner function here, it's smart. Why? Because it knows that it needs to access this variable. And it knows that if this outer function is finished executing this variable, it will not exist anymore. So somehow this inner function remembers this variable. Remember it and save it in a place. And then when I execute it, it will just grab it from this place. And that's what we called closure. So a closure is inner function, remember the outer variable. Okay, simply like that. Let's go again and try to debug it again. Now here, if I click on this one, if I go now execute the inner, now let's go to the outer here, it will be executed, it will be a return. That's my outer function. If I click on this one, notice here in my, that's my outer function, that's my inner function. Click on my inner function. If I click on the scope, I have something called closure, right? And in the closure, that name is being saved, name John. And that's simply the closure. Do you understand what I'm saying or not? So here, this inner function, it knows that if this outer function is done executing, it will have no access anymore to this name, because this name, it will be created when this function is executed, the outer one. But when it's finished executing and it returns the inner function, it will be removed from the memory. I don't have it in the memory anymore. Now, if I keep executing it, I will not have it in the memory anymore. So the inner function kind of remembers the outer variable which belong to the outer function. And how it remembers it by something we call a closure. And how can I find the closure? Well, if you go to the scope here or the script here, you click on the inner function, you have something called scopes. If you click on the scope, you have something called closure. And in the closure, as you can see here, it's a closure outer. That means that the outer function, this variable belongs to the outer function, but the inner function remember it. And that's simply what you call closure. Let me go again. So what is a closure? Its inner function has access to the outer function variable after the outer function has been executed. Is the idea clear or not? No? Guys, either tell me yes or
Just
no.
partly. Not 100%.
Why not? Why not? So the concept of the closure is very important concept in programming in general, not just in JavaScript. Let me try to write the function again. Let's go again. I will write the function with you, and we'll see what will happen. So I will just say const outer. So I have an outer function. You can name it whatever you want to. Okay, outer, it's equal to, I just have an arrow function. So it's normal function actually. Voila. I'm gonna just declare a variable. So I can just say const name. It's equal to John, for example. Now I can return an outer function. Voila. So here, as you can see, I did not create the function as before. I just return the function directly. So I'm returning my function here, the inner, we call it inner. I just did not give it to a variable. So I didn't assign it to a variable. I don't need to. Why? Because when I return it, I can save it in, it doesn't matter the name. Here, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to save it in a variable, then I'm going to use it. So it's just another way here. Okay, fine. Now, if I execute the outer function, of course, the outer function here, as you know, if I execute the outer function, it will return me this function, right? Yes, no?
Yes.
So I can save this function inside a variable, and I can name it, for example, const inner, well, now inner is a function, huh? Inner now is a function. If I hover over it, notice it's a function actually. So it's telling me it's a function. Fine. Now here, if I execute this outer function, it will just return me this guy here. Now here, this is a function. If I try to execute the inner function here, now because it's a function, I can execute it, of course. I can just execute it this way. We have a problem. What is the problem? Well, the problem is this variable here in the outer function. When I execute the outer function here, it will create this variable in the memory. But when I'm done from this function, and this function returns this inner function, this name here, it will not be exist. It will be removed from the memory. But the problem is this guy here, this inner function needs this variable. It needs to access this variable. So what is going to do? Well, what's going to do, this function is smart. It knows that it has access, or it will need this variable which belongs to the outer function. So it knows that after this outer function is being executed, it will be removed from the memory. So it kind of saves this variable here inside something we call it a closure. And then after that, when I execute it, it will just log the name, simply like that. So again, a closure is just inner function. That's the inner function. It can access the outer function variable. So this variable belongs to the outer function after the outer function is being executed. So after this function is being executed and done, this one here, it will create it in the memories, it will be removed, but this inner function actually does remember this variable by something we call it closure. More clear or not?
Yes.
Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The concept of the closure, I'm going to say it again, it's quite important. I'm going again, and I'm trying to execute my code. Notice, if I refresh, notice in the memory what's happening here. Now, in the memory, I have inner function, which is it has no value now. And of course, I have outer function here. So let's try to execute the outer function. So if I click on that, now it will go inside. It will create a variable, as you can see, variable name, John, and then it will return me this function here. Fine. Now, when it returns, notice what will happen. When it returns, I have now inner and outer function only. I don't have name John anymore. Why? Because the outer function, I execute it, I finish it. Whenever I execute the function, the variable will be created in the memory. When I'm done with them, it will be removed from the memory. Okay, now I'm trying to execute now the inner function here. But the problem is the inner function, I need this variable name. And now it's not exist in the memory anymore. So this inner function, as I told you, is smart. It remembers this variable. It stores it in, or it remember it by something, and we call it the closure. So if I click on it again, now as you can see now the inner function now, it will go now it log it. If I hover over name, see it's John. Even though that's not in the memory anymore. The name is not in the memory, as if you see. But it remember it by something we call the closure. If I click on the inner, and if I go to something called scopes, and here, as you can see, it's telling me closure outer. That means it's this closure or this variable here. It's belong to this outer function. And here's the closure. Here is name John. Simply like that. Is it okay? Should be clear.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So again, a closure is inner function. Remember the variable of the outer function after the outer function is being executed. Simply like that. That should be simple. I've shared with you an article also. Hopefully it will help you more to understand closure. Closure is very important. Okay, now let's go to the second, which is called event bubbling. So what the hell is event bubbling? I've also shared with you an article. So let me go to the article because they have nice custom event, no event bubbling. So event bubbling is very important concept in JavaScript as well. So voila. So let's say I have a button. Okay. Let's say I have a button element, and inside this button is inside the span, and this span is inside the div, and the div inside the body. And of course, the body inside the HTML, what we call root, and root, of course, it will be inside the document. So, you know, the document is just a page. Okay, now if I click on the button here, just trying to explain what is event bubbling. If I click on the button here, do you think the event click, it will stop only on the button or it will travel? What do you think? It's a simple question.
It will travel.
It will travel. So actually, that's what we call the event bubbling. So the event bubbling, from where it comes from, if you know the water, so if I have a glass of water, yeah, but I need to make it a little bit big. Voila. If I have a glass of water and I have water here, something like that. Sometimes if we have like some gas or stuff like that, or air in the water, it's like it's bubbling in the top like that. It's traveling to, so it's these guys here, these bubbles, it just move from the bottom to the top, right? Yes, no?
Yes.
Try with
Yes.
Coca-Cola or water or anything. You see that these bubbles just move from the bottom to the top. And that's the name is coming from event bubbling. So what you need to remember is that any element, any DOM element, when you click or add an event to it, the event does not stop on the element itself. No, it travels to the parent, to the parent, to the parent, to the parent until it reaches the document. Is it okay? What is the event bubbling? Yes, no?
Yes.
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 Okay, but why event bubbling is useful? Now we'll see why they are useful. So that's the simple concept I did explain. Of course, you can read this article. It's quite nice. It's very nice here. So when I click on the bottom, as you can see, the click is being bubble. That means move to the parent, and so on and so on. Here, as I mentioned, some example like that. I will make it very simple for you. So yeah, let's go to a simple example I have here. Click on this one, click on this one. If I go to my code now, and I go to my index.html. Now, as you can see in my index.html, I have something really interesting. I have a div with ID main, and inside this div, I have 9 buttons. So what I want to do here, I want to add an event listener to these buttons. That means whenever the user click on button 1, I want to log its ID, for example, or I want to log the inner text, for example. Button 2 is the same idea, button 3 is the same idea, button 4 is the same idea, button 5 is the same idea. So in order to solve this problem, I think maybe we can select all these buttons and after that add event listener to all of them, right? Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
no. But as you can see now, I have 9 buttons. If I'm gonna do that for all these buttons, it will be annoying a little bit, right? It's really annoying to do all of that. Would it be possible just to create one event for all these buttons? Is it possible or not? Yes, no. Any ideas?
Maybe yes.
Yes, can you explain your idea? Mm-hmm. Diniendo, what do you think, Diniendo?
Not with one click.
Yeah, but how?
With the ID, because ID is different.
Now, my question is very simple. I want, whenever I click on the button, I want to log the ID. Now, do I have to add event listener? In this case, I have to add event listener to all these buttons. But do I have another solution which will be easier?
Maybe you can loop through them and then add event listener.
Yeah, I can do that. Absolutely, I can. But that's annoying. Can I do something a little bit easier? Now, if I click on the button, does this event stay on the bottom or to move to the parent,
Moves.
Of course, move. Now, I just explained it. So the event bubbling, if I click on the button, this event, it will be moved to the parent. And then it will be moved to the body, the parent. Then it will be moved to the root HTML. Then it will be moved to the document. So instead of adding event listener to all these buttons, maybe I can just add event listener here only on the parent. How? Let's see. First, I need to select the parent, right? So const main, it's equal to document. And I have ID, right? Get element by ID. And the ID was main, right? Now here I can just say main, add event listener. And the event here, it will be click because I want to click on the buttons. Click. And when I click, of course, I need to handle this click. I need to execute the function because that's so that's the listener. I'm sorry, that's the handler. So that's my click. And here I need to add a function that will be the listener. Now I told you by default, whenever you add an event to any element, I receive one parameter by default. What is this parameter?
Event.
Event. So I can just receive the event here. And here now let's log the event. Log. just the event E, just EV. For now, let's just log E. Let's go to our website, refresh, and now let's go to the console. If I click now on 1, see, the event is being triggered. If I click on 2, the event's been triggered. 3 is being triggered. 4, it's being triggered. So, well, as you can see, so the event actually, so it's working for all these buttons, although I did not add event listener to any button, but I added to the parent. And because the event bubbling means that whenever I click on the button, the event will not stay only on the button. The click here event, it won't stay only on the button. It will move to the parent. And instead of adding event listener to all these button, which is annoying, I can just add event listener to this guy here, the parent. And whenever I click on any button, this event, it will travel to the parent. So now here, as you can see, I just need one event, which is much easier, right? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes.
But the
Samir-
question here, okay, now I add event listener to the parent, and now I want to know which button is being clicked. So how can I know that? Well, that's simple. If we go to the event, I told you the event is very big object. So in event, we have something called target. What is the target? Well, the target, it means which element is being clicked. Now, if I go here and I refresh and I click on 1, so it's telling me the button with ID 1 is being clicked. If I click on this one, it will tell me button with ID 2 is being clicked. If I click on this one, button with ID 3 is being clicked, and so on and so on and so on. And now here, simply, I can just know which element has been clicked using event.target. So event.target is just return the object or the DOM element which is being clicked on. So that's the event.target. We have another property which is called current target. Can anyone tell me what's the difference between target and current target? So the target, we know it's the element we click on, but what is the current target? What is the current target? So that's if I click on this one, that's the target. But the current target is the element I add the event with. Which element I add the event with?
The main.
The main. So that's what we call the current target. Now here, if I go to my button here, click. So as you can see, I have the target and I have the current target. So the current target, it will never change. As you can see, it's all the time, it's the same because I am adding event listener to the one element. So the current target, as you can see, it does not change, it stays as it is, but the target change. Why? Because the target is simply which element I click on. So here I click on button with ID 5. But the current target, it means which element I add the event with. And in my case here, it will be the parent, which will be main. And that's simply how the event bubbling is useful. So if I have a lot of the same element, and instead of adding event listener to all these elements, I can just add event listener to the parent. And because the event travel from the element or from the DOM element, I click on it, it will go to the parent, it will go to the parent, so I can capture it on the parent. And to access my element, the element I click on it, I can use event.target. And if I say event.target, of course, it will give me the DOM element of the button. If I click dot, now here I can grab the ID. So if I have an ID for my button, I can grab it and it will show me what's the ID. Actually, let's log as a current target. Like that. Now let's go back to the event and see the current target, see what's inside. Clicking. Let's go here, refresh. Let's click on this one and let's go to the event. Of course, the event, as I told you, it has a lot of property inside it. And lucky for us, they are being ordered alphabetically. So now what I'm looking for C, which is, I'm sorry, I'm looking for target first. So where is my target? As you can see, my target here is button with ID 1. If I expand this one here, so I have a lot of other property, as you can see. So for example, if I have an ID, if I search here, I have an ID C1, it gives me the ID. So it gives me a lot of stuff related to this element. I click on it. And that's my current target. Oh, I'm sorry, that's my target. If I go to the current target, where is the current target? Current target.
It's up.
Yeah, so as you can see, the current target currently here, it's null because I did not do anything. But now, if I click on this one here, no, where is the current target? Click, refresh, click again. So if I go to the current target, it should be the parent here in my example. but here it does not mention any information, current target. Let's go back. Click again, so event.target, that's my target, and I should be able to access the ID. And as for the current target here, now you know the current target will never change. So all the time it will be the element I add the event listener to it. And in my example here, it will be the div event.current target. Current target. And that's the difference between the two. If I go here, refresh, click. So give me the ID too. And even I can access the ID of the current target as well, because it has an ID. If I want to, I can access it. So let's try to access it. .id, which it has an ID. Go back here, refresh, click, and now here the ID is 1 and the ID of the current target is main. Same idea, 2, main, and so on and so on and so on. So that's simply what we call the event bubbling. The event bubbling simply whenever I click on any DOM element, the event does not stop there. It's travel to the parent, to the parent, to the parent, to the parent until it reaches the document. And sometimes that's very useful. Why? Because as I show you in my example here, let's say I have a lot of buttons. Instead of adding event listener to each button, which is annoying, I can just add event listener to the parent here. And whenever I click on the button, I can access still my button, which I click on it using event.target, which will give me the button I click on it and all the information related to it. Is the idea clear?
Yeah, we can access the value also from here.
I can access what?
Value.
I'm sorry, Diniado, I did not get your question.
Value of button. We can access the value of button using bubble.
Yeah, if you use a value, you mean what is the inner text, you mean?
Yeah.
Of course. So here in the target here, if you say target dot value, but here no, unless it will be not value, it will be inner text. Let's
Okay.
see inner text here. So here it's object, target is object, Diniando. So you can access any property exists there. And now here, if I do so, and I go to my stuff here, click, and as you can see, it gives me 1 because the inner text is 1 for the bottom. 2, 3, same idea. Let's
Yeah.
change it just to be sure. Here, I'll just, instead of saying 1, I will add some stuff like that. I'll save it. Let's go. Refresh, click, and voila, as you can see. Cool?
Thank you.
Yes? No. So event.target, it will give you the element you click on. Here, it's a DOM element. That means it's an object. And this object, of course, it has a lot of property. So you can access anything you want to. ID, if it has an ID, inner text, inner HTML, classes, whatever you want to, you can access it. Event.current target, it means the element, the DOM element, I add the event listener to it. And in my case here, it will be the parent div. And also it will be an object here. So this one here, e.current target, it will be a DOM element. It will be an object. And here also I can access any property exist on the DOM element. Is the idea clear? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes.
So this one is very useful. That's simply the event bubbling. So let's get rid of this one. Of course, in the article, it explains in detail a lot of stuff here. Remember now, I can change this behavior from event bubbling. So when I click on the button like that, I told you it travel from the event travel from the button, from the child or the element to the parent, to the parent, to the parent, to the document. I can change this behavior if I want to, and I can make the event travel from the document to the body, to the div, to the span, then to the my button. And that's what you call event capturing. Now it's purely study. In practical life, you don't need to use that. I never use that. Normally, I use the normal behavior, which is just event bubbling. But the opposite, we call it event capturing. Also, it's mentioned in the article here. I'm just trying to tell you how it is. But practically, you're never going to use it. Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That should be enough. Fine. The last one here, it will be custom event. So what is custom event? Now, you already know we have some event. Can anyone mention some event we have in JavaScript? Can anyone mention a few events we have in JavaScript?
Click,
Load.
load,
Click,
Double-click.
double click.
Mouse over.
key down, key up.
Yeah, whatever. So we have a lot of event in JavaScript. This is building in JavaScript. But we as a user, we can also create our own event if we want to. Again, that's not something really, at least I didn't do it in real life. I mean, we don't need to do that, but it's good to know. So how can I create my own event? So I can just say const event, it's equal to new event. So new event, that means the event here, it's a class. That this class is built in JavaScript. So I will say, that's my event. I will just name it event. You can name it my event. You can name it whatever you want to. So to create a new event, I will just say new event. And here I need to say, what is the event I want to do? Here I will just name it dog, for example. You can name it whatever you want to. Okay. And here, after the dog, actually, you can also add some other property if you want to. So you make like an object, and here, so after it, that's what you call event dictionary. Dictionary just being an object. And here I can mention, do I want my event to bubble? So bubble, we've seen it now. That means when I click on this element, do I want this event to travel to the parent, to the parent, to the parent? If yes, I will just say bubble true. And then here I can add some value if I want to, and the value I can use detail like that. If I'm not mistaken, it was detail. And detail, it could be an object. And here I can add any property. For example, name, it's Rover, and age is 4. So that's how we create a new custom event. So I will need to use this class. So I say new event. And here I need to first add a string. As this string here, it will be the type of the event. You can name it whatever you want to. It's your event. And there I will pass an object. And in this object, I need to define the bubble. The bubble is true or false. True, that means the event, it will travel from the parent to, from the child, from the element I click to the parent, to the parent, to the parent, as we seen. Normally, this bubble, we call it true. So we just defined it true. Details here, it's also an object, but I can pass some data here. And now when this event is being executed, I can access this data if I want to. Fine. So far it's okay. So it's okay. So now what do I want to do? I just want to select any DOM element here. Let's select this one here. Not you. Let's go back. Here I have just a div with ID second. So I'm gonna just grab it. Const second is equal to document dot get element by ID, and as the element is, of course, the ID is second, as you know. So I'm just selecting an element. Now what I need to do here, I need to add the event listener to this element. So I'm going to click on it, dot add event listener. So it will be like just a normal event. Here, what is the name of my event? It's dog, right? And here, of course, event is happen. I will need to access I will need to execute now my handler. Now here, what I want to do, as you can see, I have my DOM element. It could be any DOM element you want to. I'm adding my event, and my event is dog. And here I will, of course, receive the event. As I told you, by default, I will receive this parameter event. Now, if I want to access this value, which I mentioned in my event, I can say event.detail.name or event.detail.age. For example, now I can log event dog. No, maybe I can use backtick. And here I can just say, the dog name, for example, the dog name is here. To access it, of course, I need to say event.detail.name, and the age is event, as you can see, event.detail.age. And now here, if I go to my console here, I should show something. Of course, I don't see anything. Why? Can anyone tell me why I'm not seeing anything? So I'm adding the event dog to my element, but how can I say it? By default, this event, it will not happen. I need to so it's just like a button here. I'm just saying click, but I am not clicking on it. So I need to fire this event. I need to fire it myself. Custom event, it will not be executed. You need to fire it yourself. So I need to say second.dispatch event. Dispatch means fire the event. I want the event to happen. And here, I will just pass the name of my event here. So I name it event, I will pass it here event. Now, if I go to my console, cannot read property of undefined name. Why is that? So let's just click on this one, refresh. Let's go to my event here. And I should have in the event, I have something called name. Detail? I don't have detail. Strange, I don't have detail. So is trusted, yeah, bubble true, cancel bubble, no. The current target is div with ID second, yes. Source target is div with ID second. Why do I don't have this one? Let me check the documentation to see what mistake I am doing. Of course, I've already shared with you this one as well. So new custom event, I'm using event or custom event, doesn't matter. New custom event, so detail should be fine. Detail name, that's okay. Event dot detail dot name. And here I need just to dispatch the event. Yeah, let me just change the class. Maybe this class is not working, I don't know. So instead of event, I will just say custom event. And now let's see if that will work or not. I hope. If I go to my class here, I remove this one. Clicky. Still have a problem. Oh no, I don't have. So the dog name is Rover and age is 4. Voila. So instead of just event, actually we used to in the past to use event only. It's look like JavaScript, they're introducing a new class which is called custom event. Fine. So that's how we can create our custom event. So custom event first, I will just need any DOM element I want to, any DOM, it doesn't matter. How can I create my event? Well, I need to create a variable because I want to save my event in it. I just name it event. So I need to say new custom event. That's the class I need to use. And here I need to pass two different parameter here. The first parameter, it will be the name of my event or the type of my event. Actually, the type here is I name it dog. You can name it dog, cat, whatever you want to. And the second one, it will be an object. In this object, I need to mention that the bubble is true or false. Most of the time, the bubble, it will be true. That means when I event happen on my element, the element here second, it will also be travel to the parent until it reaches the document. And here in detail, I can also create an object called detail. And in this object, I can define some variable if I want to use. Now, if I want to, of course, I need to add my event listener here. I want to add my event. So I will say second, that's my DOM element. I select add event listener, and the name of my event is dog. And here, of course, I will need to pass my handler function. Now in the handler, I told you by default, we receive one parameter, which is called the event. And now here, if I want to access this variable in detail, all I have to do is just say event.detail.name. Now the event here, it will be object. Inside it, I have a detail. I define this object because I want to store this variable. And then age is like that. Of course, when I add my event listener, it will not happen. I need to fire it. It's just like I need to click on the button. But really, this event, we do not have it in JavaScript. So I don't have a way to define it. I need to fire it myself. So I will go second again, do dispatch event. Dispatch event mean fire the event. And then here I will pass the name of my event. And maybe I can name it, for example, my event, it will be a little bit better. My event like that. Voila. And it should be working still perfectly. Voila. So the dog name is Rover and the age is 4. Any question?
And it will be executed when you load the page, but can you execute it when you, I don't know, click something or the
No.
second? No?
Not possible because this type of event is not defined in JavaScript. Now the click is already defined, built in JavaScript. So JavaScript know what it is. But in here, I cannot do that. I need to fire it myself. So I need to fire it. If I don't fire it here, it will not be executed at all. So as you can see, yes, I have an event listener, but it will never happen. So I need to dispatch it. Or maybe I can, for example, set timeout, for example, and wait for like 10 minutes and then dispatch the event if I want to. Or maybe inside another function, I can just create another function. And then when the user log something, calls this function, then I can dispatch this event. Or maybe I can create a button. And in this button handler, whenever the user click on this button, then I can dispatch this event. It is possible as well.
Okay.
You got the idea?
Yeah.
Is it quite clear how now you can create your own custom event? Yes, guys, or no?
Yes.
Yes.
It's not something you're gonna do, but it's good to know. That's it. Yeah. Of course, this one here, if you name it whatever the type, it must be the same here because you define the type here. So if you name it cat, this one should be cat. It's normal. And you need to, when you dispatch your event, of course, you need to add it to any element you want to. Here, I just choose second, which is a div. It's totally up to you. And of course, you need to dispatch it. Again, you can, for example, create a button, and this button, for example, add event listener. And when the user click on it, then you can dispatch your event. It's also possible here. You can control it a little bit more. Any question before I delete it? Question? Okay, so now I think I cover all the subject related to your check-in. I've shared with you 3 articles. You can read them also to give you more information. And if, of course, if you have any question, you can always ask me. The most important one is the closure. As for event bubbling, you need to understand how it works. We use it sometimes, but custom event, we don't use it a lot. So event-driven programming, I think you know what it means. For example, if event happens, then some code will be executed. For example, if I have a button, I click on it, then something will happen. So that's what we call event-driven programming. Entry point, as the entry point is the file connected to your HTML. In our example, it will be init.js. Function rule, you know, we have 4 different type of function. You have component function, you have util function, you have handler, and you have event or listener. Explain all of those. Custom event, now you know what's a custom event. Component function, it's a function, as I told you, it take data, and then it return a DOM element. You already know that. DOM access, you know how to access the DOM. We have a lot of different selector, get element by ID, by query selector all, class name, tag name. So you have a lot of different property. ES5 versus ES6. Now here in the repo, there's some example written in ES5 and you need to modify to ES6. The most different between the two is, there is a lot of difference, of course, but the most obvious difference between them is just const let in ES6 and var in ES5, and also export and import using the new syntax. We are using the new syntax. The old syntax is a little bit different. It just say module.export and then assign it to the value. Then you need to import it in your file. I would say we don't use it a lot here anymore. Not in the front end, not the backend. But you may see some code which is written in the old syntax, which is ES5. Scope, I think the scope is quite clear. You know what's the script. Script is just your file. You know what's the module. The module, each file, you see when you separate it, it's a module. Closure, you know now what's the closure. Local variable, you know what's local variable. It's local to the function, for example. The block of code is just curly brace. Any variable inside the curly brace, if you use const and let, it will be a block scope. That means it will be only known inside this block scope. I'm going a little bit quickly because I know you know everything, okay? Scope, that should be clear. Code splitting, you know how to split your code now. We've seen how to separate your component function, your util function, your handler, your listener, and import after that your event or listener, what you call to init.js. Dependency graph, now normally we have a library. If you run it, it will create some code here, like a graph, and it will show you. Personally, I think it's make everything complex and you don't need it, so just ignore it. Development strategy, you know how to write development strategy. You know how to name your function. You know how to manipulate the DOM. You know how to create your component. I think we did not explain the form yet. So maybe I can bring an example about form now. Handling event, you know what's event.target now. You know the target, also you know the current target. Passing component unit testing, you know how to write unit testing for your component function. Refactoring, there is a lot of example. Everything is clear here. That's be clear. Unit testing, user story, everything should be clear 100%. Is there any question here? Any question? Any
No.
question?
No question.
Okay, let's just create a form here. Form. And of course, form now, in the form, you have something called action. We don't want the action now. So because the action doing here is we'll try to submit your code to the backend. Let's, for example, create an input and button like that, simply like that. Now here, of course, our type of button is submit, as you can see. So if I want to graph, for example, let's say my button here, let's select this button with ID submit. My button, it has an ID submit. So let me go to my code here. So const btn, it's equal to document dot get element by ID, and the ID is btn, if I'm not mistaken, right? No, the ID was submit. Let's change it to btn. Okay, click on this one again. btn, that should be fine. Let's open this one. And voila, like that. Of course, now if I try to type something and click on this one, something is happening, right? What's happening even if I click enter? Something is happening, right? What's going on?
Reload the page.
The page is refreshing. I need to somehow to prevent this default behavior. So I will just say btn dot add event listener. The event is click. And when I click, of course, now here, I will just trigger my handler. I will create here an arrow function directly. I will not separate them. And of course, as I told you, whenever I add an event, I will receive something called event by default, right? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes.
And now here I need to say event.prevent default. Voila. And now here it will not refresh anymore. If I click enter, it will not refresh anymore. Now let's log our event. We just log event dot what was the example? Event dot target it was. What is the form? Event dot target dot form. Let's see. So if I say event dot target, and of course the target, it means the element I click on it, as you know. So if I try to click on it now, it will show me my button. So let's see if I have event dot target dot form. Not sure, but let's see. Of course, in my HTML, as you can see, I have a form, and inside it, I have an input, then I have a button and stuff like that. Now, when I click on the button, I have an event. I will try to say event.target.form to see if I have a form or not. So let's refresh it and see. If I click on this one, click, and as you can see, it shows me my form here, actually. It gives me my form with input with button. So when it gives me my form here, I can use event.target.form, and for example, say, let's actually log the form here. It's logging the form. And if I log the form, I think I should be able to access a lot of property. The easiest way it will be actually to remove this one and only log the event. So let's here, refresh, click on this one, click on this one. It was target, right? So I need to search for target. That's my target. If I click on the target, I need to search for form now. Can you find the F, please? Oh, yeah, well, that's my form. If I click on the form here, notice it gives me both inputs, the input with ID input and my bottom as well. So everything inside the form. And here, from here, I can access the input. I can access anything related to my bottom. So here, where is the ID? For example, I have an ID input on my bottom. So I can access any property I want to. That's 0. And here for the bottom also, I can access any property I want to. And as you notice here, we have indexes. So to access it, so for example, if I want to access the bottom, I can just say event.target.form bracket 0. That's me bracket 0. That will be the input, for example, dot value. And because it's the input, I have a value on it, right? So let's try now to log this value to see if we have it or not. Click. And if I hit enter, voila, it logs the value, as you can see. Clear or not? Yes, no?
Yes.
So that will be only in the form. So only when you have a form and you have an input and you have a button here, this button, of course, type submit because we want to submit our form. Now, when you add an event listener to the bottom here, you can. The event here, it will also include all your form. So you can access the form, and from the form, it create like HTML collection, and you can access the first element here, which will be the input. So you need to say bracket 0 because it's HTML collection. It's just like an array, so you can access it. Bracket 0, it will give me the input. Bracket 1, it will give me the bottom. And of course, if I have more element, it will give me all these elements here. So if I have another input, for example, I don't know, input type, let's say, what type do we have? Let's say, there is another thing here, email, for example. And now here it will have 3 children. This form has 3 children. If I want to access this guy, I can say bracket 0, this one bracket 1, and this one bracket 2. And I can access anything I want to. The type I want, the ID, the value, everything I want. Is the idea clear? Yep, no.
Yes.
Okay. That's what we call event.target.form. If there is any question, let me know. If not, I will ask you first, please, to go to your check-in and check what you understand. And if you did not understand anything, uncheck it. and please complete your week 1, week 2, and add week 1 and week 2. So if you have a question, I know that you have this question and I can explain it for you. After you finish your check-in, I need to close them now. You can go back to your project, and your project is grocery bot. You need to finish it, as I told you, before Monday, and I will check them, of course. If you finish it early, it will be better like that. I can just check it and everything. And voila, that's simply our module. Any question? Let me stop recording.